Yeah, thank you for having me, inviting me to come. I'm super excited to be here and talk to you guys. A little bit about me professionally is, like Nancy said, I'm a counselor at New Life Counseling Center, a counseling center that was established out in Round Rock. We have a big practice out there, about 12 therapists, ranging from working with children to adults and all kinds of issues. But what I'm most excited about is a year ago, we got to open up a Southwest location right down the street from you guys. So now we have an office with 4 of us down there, 4 therapists down there. I'm the lead therapist. Bee Cave, about a mile from Mopac. I personally work with adults, don't work with minors. Work with individuals, couples, dealing with anxiety, depression, relationship issues, grief and loss. I do a lot of affair recovery work. So that's a little bit about what I do. I have a pamphlet here for you guys if you want to look through it about New Life, and my business card as well. But a little bit about me personally. I married my high school sweetheart after dating for 7 years. And we've been married for 28 years. And we have 2 grown children. Our son, we got married him off this past summer. Lives in Upper Michigan, so we don't get to see them as often as I wish. But excited about that. And then we have a daughter who's a senior at Abilene Christian University and has been accepted to Texas Tech. So this summer she'll head to Tech to get her graduate degree in occupational therapy. So that's a little bit about our kiddos and our family. You guys may understand this terminology, but there's a difference between launching and off the payroll. Does that sound familiar? So we've launched both of our kids. You know, they're out of the house on their own, but we still have one that's on the payroll. Right? So we're working on that. I think that's getting ready to transition soon. But so my husband and I are transitioning in life and kind of getting used to having our own schedule and getting to dictate it ourselves, which is really different for us. My joy is getting to work as a counselor. I honestly can't believe that it's a job. Like seriously, don't tell my boss, but I would do it for free because I love it. I love being a counselor. I love being able to walk alongside people that are struggling and hurting and going through tough times and just getting to help them navigate that journey. And so that's why I love doing things like this. And I appreciate, Nancy, you reaching out and asking me to come. Marshall's a great friend, and I'm so excited that he hooked me up with you guys so that I could just be here today and tell you a little bit about something that we kind of all know about already. But hopefully I'm going to give you some information that you don't know about that might be a little bit helpful. So I'm going to start by asking, who in this room, raise your hand if you have never ever experienced anxiety in any shape or form? Yeah, just as I suspected, right? We all know what anxiety is. We've all experienced anxiety firsthand. Different levels of anxiety, different intensities of anxiety, but we have all been there. So I'm going to talk to you about something you already know something about, right? So let's talk a little bit about the symptoms of anxiety, because there's symptoms to it, right? What are some symptoms that someone might exhibit from anxiety?
Sweating.
Sweating, yep.
Rapid heartbeat.
Yes, rapid heartbeat.
Trouble breathing.
Trouble breathing, okay. I'm not trying to be a parrot, I'm repeating so the video can hear us.
Loss of sleep.
Loss of sleep, yes, absolutely. Anything else?
Overeating.
Overeating, yes, for sure. Anything else you can think of?
Undereating.
Yes, it can be undereating too, that's right. You know, there's that loss of sleep or oversleeping, you know, that can go either way with the anxiety.
Lack of patience, personality change.
Screaming.
Yes, which starts to interfere with our relationships, right? Because our temperament starts to change because of things that are going on. So then it starts to affect our relationships with others. Yes.
Over drinking.
Yes, absolutely. Over drinking. That's right. Kind of an escape, trying to escape the anxiety, which leads to other problems, right? Anything else? So, go ahead.
I think you're right about relationships. When you're really in pain, here I am trying to help my husband get over his knee surgery. But when you're really in pain, you just aren't as functional.
Yep.
Well, you're miserable. And unfortunately, sometimes you're in so much pain. A lot of times, pain is not visible to others.
I know.
You sit there and they go, what's the matter with you? You
Yeah.
look fine to me. And so you end up making everybody around you miserable, and they can't figure out what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
So it's a, you know, it's a catch position where you're the loser.
You know,
It
my
is.
husband said, why are you going to this meeting? You know all these things about neuropathy. I said, it's nice to be with people that understand.
Mm-hmm. They've been there, right? Yeah. So anxiety creeps into every area of our life, and it can be all-consuming. The title of this today is Anxiety, the Emotional Bacteria. And if we think about bacteria, physical bacteria, what does it do? It kind of permeates the body, right? Well, anxiety can do the same thing, and it can totally take over, and it can affect every area of our life. So because we all know what anxiety is, we've all experienced it, we all know what some of the symptoms can be. Sometimes we don't recognize some of the symptoms that are caused from anxiety, but often we do. Let's talk about some things that you might not know about anxiety and maybe how we can take a little bit of control back on the anxiety, okay?
Do you know what it also does? Anxiety
What does it do?
Anxiety also prevents you from thinking. It affects your thinking.
Yeah.
You can't think.
Susan, did you see my presentation already? Because you're ahead of me.
No. No. It affects your thinking process.
Right.
You go to speak, you can't
Yep.
remember what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put things in order. You get confused. It's all a part of anxiety.
Yep, you're absolutely right, and we're going to talk about that.
Okay, I'm ahead of you.
Yeah, no, you're on track. So that's exactly what it does. So we're going to talk about that and how we can kind of navigate that a little bit. So what I want to first do is tell you about a couple of different kinds of anxiety. There are two different kinds of anxiety. So the first anxiety that we're going to talk about is acute anxiety. Okay? Let me tell you a little bit about that. Hang on. I'm going to put some words up here that you've probably seen before and you recognize. You might have experienced them. I don't like this already. Hang on. I've got right here.
I can't see that.
Yeah. So this says acute anxiety. How's this? Okay. So first of all, acute anxiety, all that is an anxiety that comes and then it goes when our situation is over with. Meaning, I'm in a little fender bender, I'm driving down the street, I get hit a little bit. Well, my anxiety is going to go up in that situation. But once I get home and my car's fine, I'm fine, insurance is called, my anxiety is going to go back down. Okay, so that's just acute anxiety. It kind of comes and it goes with the situation. The deal about that is that our bodies are designed to handle acute anxiety, meaning we release hormones, cortisol, things like that, and it kind of does its thing, and then it all goes back into place. So we are made to handle acute anxiety. Now, one of the things we're going to have is we're going to have a stress response, though. And there's a couple things you need to know about stress responses. And these four things, fight, flight, freeze, or caretake, are all stress responses. So one thing you need to know about a stress response is I don't choose my stress response, okay? It's automatic, biological, it just happens. That's important to know. I don't process it, I don't think about it, I don't decide it. The second thing to know about a stress response is the whole purpose of it is to bring the anxiety down in the moment. Okay, so these can be helpful. I'm going to have some kind of response. So I'm going to give you guys a silly example. Let's say we're all sitting here in this room and all of a sudden a tiger comes through that door. We're all going to have a stress response to that. Okay, every single one of us is going to have some kind of stress response. Now, a few of us may go to try to fight it. Not that we think we can beat a tiger. Again, remember this is the part where it's automatic. But we go to attack the tiger, okay? Maybe some of us run out those other doors, like I'm out. Again, I don't think I can outrun a tiger, but if I can put a little bit of distance there, it might bring my anxiety down just a little bit. That's the purpose of the stress response. Some of us might freeze, like, please don't eat me. I'm not a threat to you. I hope you're not hungry. Okay? And some of us may caretake by jumping in front of others. Okay? So we're all going to have some kind of stress response. And I'm going to ask you guys just by a show of hands, like, who in here thinks they might try to fight the tiger? Anybody? Okay. A couple people? Yeah. Who in here thinks they might run?
Me.
Okay. A few more. Who in here thinks they might freeze? Okay. Maybe a couple of us. Who in here thinks they might caretake for others? Okay. Yeah. Automatic responses. There's, you know, that's just what we might do in order to manage our anxiety. We don't even realize that that's what we're doing, but that's what we're doing, is we're trying to manage the anxiety. We're going to move now to a different kind of anxiety, which I think is going to be a lot more familiar to you guys. Yes, sir.
I just have a comment. I think you will not know what you will do till it happens.
I agree. I agree.
And,
No, I would run.
and different types of acute anxiety is different. I mean, you've been in, I'm sure, situations where you with a loved one and in an accident or something, you needed to go to do that, so you think you would do that, but then maybe a tiger, you wouldn't. If you're by yourself, it may be totally different.
I read this epileptic fell in front of the subway in New York, and a complete stranger jumped down on the
I heard
track.
about that, yes.
Yeah, and he didn't even think about it. I don't think this fellow knew he would do that, but he just immediately saved the fellow. It's quite amazing.
I think you're absolutely right, which I think you're going to see that over here even more so. What we tend to experience a lot and we don't even realize is chronic anxiety. Okay, that's different than acute anxiety. The chronic anxiety is that anxiety that stays and doesn't go away. I actually say it's like living life as if there's a tiger in the room all the time. That's chronic anxiety, which I think a lot of you probably in this room, my guess would be, yes, that's where I'm at. Because of everything that I deal with medically, yes, there's a lot of chronic anxiety where I just stay anxious all the time. Our bodies aren't designed to do that, to stay anxious all the time. So then we have all kinds of other issues, health issues and relationship issues because of the chronicness of the anxiety. So let's talk a little bit about what this might look like. Specifically, I'm going to throw my husband under the bus. I'm just going to use him as my example today. He knows I use him as an example a lot. So let's just say my husband and I, we're not getting along, okay? So there's already this kind of this anxiety going on in our relationship. And then something happens, and so my stress response is going to be conflictual right now. Something happens and shoots my anxiety up even further, right? Something happened, an argument or whatever. Well then, because of my chronic anxiety, I let him have it. This is my stress response, right? I'm not thinking about it, I'm not choosing it, I'm just doing it. I let him have it. I verbally vomit all over him. And when I'm done, I feel so much better. Like I got that off my chest. Now he doesn't feel better, right? No. And I haven't done anything to fix the problem. All I've done is succumb to my stress response. That's what I did. And so in the moment, I lowered my anxiety. Now, let you in on a little secret. That anxiety's coming back. Because I haven't done anything to work on it, I just released it for a moment. It's kind of like the pressure cooker. Okay, so if my stress response is to distance, again, using my husband, we're not doing well, things aren't going good. I want to distance from him, if that's my stress response, and that can look several different ways. I can literally get in my car and I can drive away, right? Like go take a drive, go to a friend's house, whatever. When I do that, that helps me lower my anxiety because I've created that distance there. Or maybe we're sitting on the same couch, but I emotionally shut down. That's another way I can emotionally distance. Because to stay connected, if that's my stress response, is way too stressful for me. I can't do it. So I just have to emotionally distant, okay? So that is one way, one stress response that some of us handle. Okay. The one up, one down positions, those are like two different positions. They look very, very different. So a person who tends to have a one up stress response, that looks a more authoritative. Like, I know what I'm talking about. You need to listen to me. I've got the right way. Like, it's so interesting because a person who one ups truly believes they're right. Okay, it's hard to convince them that they're not. So a one upper is that authoritative position. Okay, you need to listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. This is how we need to do it. Some of you guys are smiling. A one down person is that person who says, I'm taking the deferring position. Like, I don't want to do it your way. I don't like your way. It's not my favorite, but I can't handle the conflict. I can't handle the fight, so I'm giving in. But over time, I tend to grow resentful about that. Okay, that's what the one down position looks like. Now, the triangle is an interesting position, and let me explain this to you. It takes a little bit more of an explanation. A triangling position, I call it a stabilizing position. So let's say my husband and I aren't getting along. Okay, there's two of us. We're not getting along. But if I can pull in a stabilizer, that's helpful. So think of a two-legged stool. A two-legged stool is not stable, right? But you pull in that third leg and now you have stability on a stool. It's the same in a relationship. If my husband and I aren't getting along, maybe I'll just pull in a stabilizer and that'll help. So what that might look like in real time is maybe, like Rick, your example of drinking. Like, what if I start drinking? My attention goes here to drinking. That makes me feel better in the moment, and I don't have to think about this relationship here. Maybe my stabilizer is my children. I enjoy my children or my family. I won't have to think about my husband and our unstable relationship, so I'll put my attention right here. Maybe it's ministry. Maybe it's community service or work or anything else that we can take our focus off. It can be anything positive or negative. It can be, that's what an affair is. An affair is a stabilizer. It's a triangle.
You know, this sounds more like distance. I thought the triangle would be bringing a counselor in where you have someone to mediate for you.
Yes, good point. So let me explain a little bit further. Then also part of the triangle, part of understanding the triangle is, what if we're not getting along, so I call a friend and I'm like, my husband, he's doing this again. And she's like, oh, Deana, I'm so sorry. That's not fair to you. Now she starts siding with me, right? What does that do for me? Brings my anxiety down, right? Because it feels good because she's siding with me. So what you're talking about is a counselor is going to stay neutral. So a counselor may not relieve your anxiety when you're in the room. If there's two people in the room, and they're staying neutral, that probably is not going to help the couple relieve their anxiety at a superficial level.
It lets them talk and express their position.
Right, right. And definitely we want to open up that dialogue and talk about all that and understand where that's coming from. But the triangle position is, I need you to side with me. I'm going to call the people. I'm not going to call somebody who's not going to side with me, right? I'm going to call someone who's going to side with me because that's going to feel good and that's going to lower my anxiety. All of these are about lowering our anxiety. If I call someone who's not going to side with me, that's not going to lower my anxiety. So those are all stress responses. Now, what I want to say about this side, the chronic anxiety side, these are not helpful or healthy, but we do them. Every single one of us do them. And sometimes we do multiple. Like in certain relationships, I may say, well, in my marriage, I tend to do one stress response, but when I'm around my children, I do a different stress response, or at work, I may do a different stress response. So depending on the relationship, depending on maybe somebody else's personality, I may do something different, okay? So we all do them, but we're going to talk about a different way to do them, okay? A way to manage the anxiety instead of going to the stress response, which creates more problems in the end. Only relieves the anxiety in the moment. Okay, I'm going to ask a question here. I'm going to ask for a show of hands where you think you find yourself in this, okay? And you may raise your hand multiple times. That's okay. I'll participate. Who in here feels like their stress response is conflictual?
Is what?
Conflictual, like fighting like that. Okay. Yep.
Yes, it can be.
Okay.
Can be. Raising my anxiety.
That's, yeah. Get my card, call me later, we'll talk. Who in here thinks their stress response is distancing?
Put your hand up, okay.
Okay. Who in here says that they think their stress response sometimes can be a one-up? All right. Anybody in here think they tend to take it more of a deferring one-down position?
Put your hand down, John.
Okay. You hear the one-up right here, right? Like, put your hand down. And the triangling. Who in here thinks that they tend to, okay, perfect. Yes. So, well, you know what? That's not uncommon. That is not uncommon for someone to say, oh, wait a minute, I've done all those. And when the one doesn't work, like I'll start out with this stress response, and if it doesn't work, then I move into this stress response.
Well, what if somebody doesn't know? Because he's wrong.
See,
That's when you need a counselor.
Yeah, that's right.
The thing is, it depends on the degree of the chronic anxiety of the other person. You know, so if the other person is really coming at you with, you know, all guns blazing, I'll distance.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
distances himself.
And if it's not so much of a, you know, that much, or I am maybe a little bit of anxiety on something totally different. Maybe I've got a problem with my work or whatever. And she's
Yes.
coming at the wrong time. I'll come at her real hard. Sometimes it's like, you know, we got an argument over something, and I'll take the one up. You know, do it my way or the highway.
Oh, yeah.
Or she'll do it that way. And sometimes, too, is if it's something that I don't feel very comfortable talking about, I'll take the
one
sit
down.
back seat.
Yeah.
And at other times, you know, it's like,
You know,
like,
I told him to get his ears checked. I don't think that's what the problem is at all. I think he can hear fine.
the other,
I
the
think
other,
he's just
yeah,
distancing
the other thing,
himself.
yeah, and the other thing is like,
Understand.
you know, like if there's a third party in the situation, like our grandkids,
Yep.
you know, and the grandkid will take my side
Oh, yeah.
on something, that's the triangle.
Yep.
I drift to and say, yeah, you're right, Jessica, you're right, you know, and that type of thing.
Yes, I think you see it very clearly what's going on for you. And I love the way that you can piece apart, like if it's not super conflict, if the other person's response is this way, I tend to respond this way. And that is often what we do. Our responses, our anxiety often is based off of other people or other information. So if my husband comes home and he's all upset and he's in a bad mood or whatever, that may raise my anxiety, right? And then I have a different stress response due to that. And so that's kind of a different class that we could talk about sometime. But how do I differentiate myself and be responsible for just me, no matter what he's doing? And that would be a whole different class. But really concentrating on me. And so what if I go to the doctor and I get some news that's scary or I don't like? Or what if there's some therapy or treatments that I've got to try? Excuse me really fast. This just fell. That I want to try or need to try, or some decisions I need to make, that's going to be really difficult. And so it can raise my anxiety. And then, just as somebody in here said, I think you said, once like my anxiety goes up, and it can be something about my health, it can affect my relationships. So how can I be responsible for me no matter what? So one of the things is I want to work on this. If I can now pinpoint what my stress response is, I want to work on that. Okay, so let's say I in here raise my hand for distancing or one up. Depending on what kind of personality I'm met with, I'll go one of those two ways. Used to be when I was much younger, I was very conflictual. So what I do, so let's say distancing. If I'm a distancer, I want to be aware of it. When I find myself, my anxiety is going up and I want to work on that, and I feel that urge to just pull back and just distance, like I don't want to return that phone call, or I don't want to deal with that, or I don't want to talk to those people. Whatever that situation is, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to really work to not do that. But let me give you a little bit of warning. What a lot of people will do, not intentionally, but they'll say, I'm going to work on my stress response. So they'll go from distance to conflictual. The pendulum will swing to the opposite. I don't want to trade one stress response for the other. I just want to manage my distancing. So not the opposite of from distancing to conflictual, but distancing to staying present. How do I stay present when I just want to emotionally run or physically run? Like, I'm not showing up at that meeting because when I go to that meeting, it raises my anxiety. I can't handle that. How do I stay present? if you look at your green sheet that I gave you, these are the antidotes for stress responses. So it kind of talks about, well, if at the bottom, it'll show you the stress response, and at the top, it kind of tells you what the antidote is. What's the goal? What do I want to work on? I want to work on, if I want to caretake, how do I just take care of myself? How do I just worry about myself? If I want to call my friend to lower my anxiety, how do I work to manage that myself? Well, I can tell you, just do it, but that's not really helpful. So let me tell you something else that could be helpful. I want to talk a little bit about the brain and the way the brain works. Now, I'm going to keep it simple because I don't know a lot about the brain, and scientists are still studying the brain. But I'm going to grossly oversimplify everything, but there's a couple different parts of the brain that I think to be aware of it, understand it would be a little bit helpful. So if you want to get out your white sheet with the brains on them, and I just wrote them down on the board here. It's the same thing that's on your paper, so whatever's easier to look at. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the frontal lobe and the limbic system, okay? So frontal lobe right here in the front of the head, and if this is my brain right here, and this is my frontal lobe, okay? And if I open up my brain kind of to the back, you'll see that this is the limbic system, and you can kind of see them lit up on the paper. The limbic system is kind of buried down low into the brain. So in my frontal lobe, this is my thinking. In my limbic system, this is my emotions and my reactivity. And what's interesting about these two parts of our brain, and this is where we're going to spend our time today, but what's interesting about that is these two places in our brain cannot be turned on at the same time. So if I'm in thinking mode, I'm not in emotional reactivity mode. Here's the catch. If I'm in emotional reactivity mode, guess what that means I can't do? I can't think. Yeah. And that's a biggie. It's like a light switch. It's one or the other. Notice where stress responses are? They're over here in the limbic system. Let's talk a little bit about what each system does. So we're going to kind of go down. Over here in the frontal lobe, thinking mode, like I said, and feelings mode in the limbic system. If I'm over here, I'm responding. But if I'm over here, I'm reacting. If I'm over here, I'm in reality. But if I'm over here, I'm in my perception. Perception is not the same as reality, even though sometimes it feels like it is. Over here, I get to clarify things. I get to clarify what the facts are. Over here in the limbic system, that's just my opinion. Everybody's opinion can be different, right? Over here, I get to make choices. I get to choose what I want to do based on the facts. Over here, my emotions take over. When our emotions are in control, we can't make choices. Our emotions are making the choices for us. Over here is objectivity, the facts, just the facts. But over here in the limbic system, it's subjectivity. Back to that whole my perception, my opinion, not the facts. Here's one that's kind of weird. In my frontal lobe, it's unnatural. And in my limbic system, it's natural. Now, go back and remember when I said that in our stress responses, it's automatic. That's why I say it's natural. Because in our limbic system, you know, even animals have limbic systems, right? It's their instinct, natural instinct. That's what's natural about it. We, as humans, are the only animals that have a frontal lobe. It's unnatural to get there to think. It's really difficult. In my frontal lobe, that's where my logic is. Over here in my limbic system, my stress responses that we just talked about. Can you start to see the difference there? When you kind of just look at those, do you see that there's a big difference if I'm here or if I'm here? I'm going to give you a real life example of what it might look like to be in the frontal lobe or in the limbic system. I'm going to take you back to the 80s. Anybody else in here like the 80s besides me? I love the 80s. Do you remember the 80s? The 80s were the time of big hair. Like women paid a lot of money to have spiral perms, really big hair. We had like really high bangs that could get satellite. And men even had big hair back then, okay? So this is when my husband and I got married back in the 80s. And he had big hair just like me. Which is funny because if you knew my husband now, he's bald. But back then he had big hair. And so this story is going to be about my husband and a blow dryer, which is hilarious because he doesn't even have to wash his hair now. But when I tell this story, what I really want you to do is not think so much about the content, because we all have our own stories and the content changes from person to person. Just like you guys in here talked about your own stories in your own health journey. It all sounded different, but there is a common ground, right? You guys are dealing with chronic health issues. So there's common ground, but the stories are different. Well, I'm going to give you a story, and I don't want you to focus so much on my story as on this, the common ground that we all have in this room, okay? So back when I was a newlywed, my husband, the way our routine worked, he would get up and he would get ready for work, and he would get in the shower, then he'd be out the door to work, and then I would get ready for work, right? And so that was kind of how our routine was. So I didn't really see him in the morning. That was kind of how that went. And then one thing to know about me is, and I didn't realize this back then, I know it now, but I needed everything in its place. I needed things clean. I needed structure. And why? Because my anxiety would go up if it wasn't. Okay, so I was really anal about all of that. My own anxiety. Well, so I get up one morning and I go into the bathroom to take my shower, and I look on the bathroom counter and the blow dryer is sitting out on the bathroom counter. And I'm like, huh, it's kind of weird. My husband knows I like everything put away. Everything has a place. That's kind of weird. All right. So went on. The next day I get up and I get ready for work and the blow dryer's out. Huh. Well, it's kind of rude. He knows I like things put away. I don't understand why he just left the blow dryer out. Next day, blow dryer's out. What a jerk. Like, I can't believe how disrespectful this man is. I can't believe he left the blow dryer. I mean, how hard is it to put it away when you... Okay, can you hear my reactivity going up? Can you hear my subjectivity, the subjectivity of, what a jerk, how rude, how disrespectful. You hear that? Okay, see the limbic system? So it's all kicking in. Every day I got up that week, that blow dryer was sitting out, and he was such a rude, disrespectful, unloving, jerky husband. I couldn't believe it. So I had finally had it, right? Come the weekend, this was back when my stress response was conflictual. I let him have it. Like, what are you doing? You left the blow dryer out every day. It has a place. You know that. Okay, here all this going on. You see what's kicking in for me over here? One thing you need to know about reactivity is when somebody comes at us reactively, normally, we're going to respond with reactivity. Whether that's conflictual or whether that's distancing, we're going to respond by reactivity. Okay? So I came at him reactively, and normally they're going to come back at us reactively, and then I'm going to come back reactively, and then they're going to come back reactively, and then conflict is a guarantee, right? Well, I'm all over the place over here on the limbic system, and I come at him with my stress response. I'm all conflictual, and I can't believe that he's done this, and he's such a rude, disrespectful, unloving husband. And he's able to stay over here in the frontal lobe, and he responds to me rather than reacting. He responds and he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I left that out for you because I knew you'd be using it next. Dagger in my heart, right? Because my subjectivity said he's rude, disrespectful, unloving, jerky husband. But once I got the facts, because I asked him, the facts were he was really loving and thoughtful and caring and respectful. You see the difference? You see what I did in my own? I call it jumping off the subjective cliff. I jumped off the subjective cliff, and it was completely inaccurate. What I wish I would have done, if I could go back and do it again, and we have the opportunity to do this all the time, don't we? Is clarify. Hey, if I can manage my own anxiety, okay, my anxiety of I need things clean. If I could have managed my own anxiety, I could have gone to him and asked for the facts and clarify. Hey, can I ask you, I've noticed you've been leaving the blow dryer out. Can you tell me why you keep leaving the blow dryer out? And then he has a chance to respond to me and say, oh yeah, I was leaving that out for you. But do you want me to put it away? Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. And I could have responded by having a choice. Oh, now I have a choice because I can see it now, right? My emotions aren't so all over the map. I get to make a choice and go, yeah, you know what? Go ahead and leave that out. Like, I really like that. Or I could have said, you know what? Go ahead and put it away. Like, I'll get it out. I'd rather it be put away. Okay. You see how that could have gone so differently if I would have been able to manage my own anxiety, stay in my frontal lobe? It looks so different than in the limbic system.
Can we take that board home with us?
Well, it's right there. It's on your sheet.
So I have a comment.
Yes, yeah.
So what you're telling is the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most of the time, in relation, people compete with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think that they're a team
Mhm.
because they're emotional.
Mhm.
So they kind of like, oh, you know, I want to be right. So even though your husband explained clearly, you know, not staying emotional,
Mhm.
you know, he said this is the reason why you said, you immediately caught it.
Mhm.
But most of the time they don't even catch it.
Mhm.
Because of their ego, they kind of like, no, I'm right. Whatever they are saying is not correct. They're just, you know, kind of like defending themselves.
Mhm.
So, but thinking back a little bit later, maybe they calm down and they
Yes.
see. So hopefully, you know, self-introspection is
Mhm.
very important, you know, to get to that, you know, managing the anxiety levels. Even though
Yes.
you know all these things, but because of the emotion and because the one that you said, one up and one down,
Mhm.
I'm always right.
Mhm.
And you're not giving the other person a chance.
Yes.
You know, brings that conflict. But they, you know, eventually they calm down, and it might take years and decades, but
Mhm.
you figure it out.
Right.
And then if we know all the things that we know, now, we could have had best life ever.
Right. No, you're so right. And can I explain how that's what's happening in your brain? So what you're explaining is like one is reactive, then the other's reactive, right? Whether it's one up, one down. That's both limbic systems kicking in. And have you then, like she was saying, like, you know, give it some time and I can think about it and go, oh, okay, maybe I didn't handle it the best. I could have handled it. You know what that is? That is your emotional guidance system getting back in check and you're moving back to the frontal lobe. Now I can think. Remember, they can't be turned on at the same time. So have you guys ever been in that situation where you've had a conflict with anyone and then you sat down with that person and you guys have really talked about it and you've resolved it, but you're kind of still a little bit stirred up on the inside, but you really have resolved it, but for some reason you're still kind of a little bit stirred up? Has that ever happened to anybody but me? Okay, so what that is we're just still over here in the limbic system, but if you notice, give it a little bit of time, give it 30 minutes, an hour, some people a couple hours, and then we're back to the frontal lobe. And then we can actually talk about it, and we can actually work to stay here. Now it's going to be really easy to flip back over there, right? Because this is natural. This is not natural. This is not easy. But we can do it. So our brains get wired a certain way at a very young age. Our stress responses are natural, so they get wired at a young age. We're probably we're doing this as a little kid. If you think about your grandkids or your own children, like, you see what they do, right? You see the ones that stomp off, or you see the ones that lay there and throw a temper tantrum on the floor, the different stress responses. So our brains get wired a certain way. The coolest thing about our brain is we can rewire it by practicing it differently, by really working and being intentional and being aware of it and working to do it differently. Not based on, and here's what I love about that scenario, and I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to try to pretend that my husband and I, we always do it right, or he always does it right. We don't. We don't always do it right. But here's the deal. I love that example because it shows one person over here and one person over here. How hard is it to be over here when someone's coming at you in reactivity mode? super hard. But that was my husband being responsible for himself, and he was kind of like, okay, Deana can be whatever she wants to be at the moment, but I'm going to manage me, and I'm just going to respond. And that's the goal, is like whatever you've got coming at you, health issues, doctor reports, relationship issues, I'm going to work to manage me in the midst of all this. Not easy, but it can be done. I want to do something with you guys. If y'all will get out your little piece of paper that has a pencil taped to it, and just go ahead and remove your pencil, because we're going to write on the piece of paper. Am I a good taper? You should open my Christmas presents.
Our
Use super tape.
Are visits to you
I'm sorry?
covered by insurance?
We do not take insurance, but I can give a receipt and you can file with your insurance company. And people do that all the time. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is just write your first and last name. I'm not going to look at it. No one else is going to look at it. This is just for you. So no anxiety about this. So what was that experience like? Not what does your name look like? What was the experience of writing your name? What was that like for you?
I like writing my name.
You like writing your name? Okay. What were you going to say?
Wrote. I mean, it's just.
Wrote, like you do it all the time, you can do it?
I thought, oh, what part of the paper am I supposed to write on? I didn't write on.
I didn't give you any directions, did I?
Say to fold it or not, but I want to
That's
fold
what
it.
I was.
Okay. Okay. So you guys were putting a lot of thought into that. But for some, you just wrote your name and that was easy. So was the actual mechanics of writing your name difficult for you?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Tell me about that.
I can't, when I go to write anymore, I can't make my letters
Okay.
like I used to. It's more difficult, and I print.
Okay.
Exactly what I have done.
Okay. So you guys have to put a little bit more thought
I put a lot
into
more
it.
effort into so it's readable.
Those that don't have issues with physical issues with your hand, what was that like for you?
Nothing.
Easy for you? Okay.
I, again, made a decision about, well, do I sloppy it, or do I just, I'm a draftsman, do I
Okay.
write it carefully? I picked sloppy.
Okay.
Well, she said it, you no one else can look at it, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, did that help?
Part of it. Yeah.
Did that help when I said that? Like nobody else is
Maybe
going to see that?
unconsciously.
So I
You
took the
still,
most
it's your
advanced part.
profession.
Well, I decided.
My deal was, what part of the paper am I supposed to write it on? That was really freaking me out.
Okay.
How big do you write it? How small do you write it?
Yeah.
And I decided that too.
You guys are like
Because
deep
it's
thinkers.
slightly bent, so I thought, well, this is the way it's gonna naturally bend.
That is so
You guys
funny.
are
Yep.
control freaks.
In my own
That's the name of that tune.
Okay, well, what I want you to do now is I want you to take and put the pencil in your opposite hand and do it again.
Do it with the opposite hand?
Yes.
Forget that.
Oh, I can't even do
I
it.
can't even do it. I can't even hold the pencil.
How much time are you going to give me?
Yeah.
We only have till noon.
Okay.
I've never tried this before.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty legible, really.
You did pretty good.
I really did. It's easier in my right hand.
There you go.
It's kind of weird.
I broke the point off.
Nancy's over here like concentrating. The tongue is hanging out.
That's a lot of anxiety, isn't it? That's acute anxiety, right?
Yeah, there you go. Like she's going to go home and go, I just want to go take a nap and I'm good. Okay, so how was that experience?
Fun.
Fun? Yeah, Susan's like, yeah, I did pretty good. I'm like better with the other hand. She's going to just start writing with the opposite hand. What about?
It was challenging.
Okay, challenging for you? Yeah. Okay, so was the first time challenging for you? The dominant hand, was that challenging?
No.
Nope. So this time was challenging. Last time was not for you. Okay.
And I felt inadequate.
Okay. Yeah. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Do you think that over time you could get better at writing with that non-dominant hand? If you like practiced it over and over again? Yeah?
Well, time is
Yep.
a relative term.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I didn't say perfect it, right? Just get better. Do you feel like you could get better with it over time? Yeah. So old patterns, except for our outlier here, like you're like the bell curve, you messed up our bell curve. But for the most part, our dominant hand was easy, relatively easy, okay? I don't think you guys, some of you had to think more about it. Some of you didn't have to even think about it. It was so rote for you. But then when you switched to your non-dominant hand, it sounded like for most people it was like harder, challenging, and even started to like infringe on the emotions like, oh, I feel kind of inadequate because I can't do this. Like it took a lot more thought. That is because you've been doing it for a very long time. Your brain is wired to use your dominant hand. But the coolest thing is we can rewire the brain over time. If we were in a car accident and we lost that dominant hand, over time we would get better at using the non-dominant hand. Now, it may not ever look like we want it to look. Maybe it might. We might master it. I don't know. But over time we would get better. The point of that is old patterns are easy and new patterns are difficult, challenging. In fact, if I say pick up your pencil, I'm guessing everyone in the room is going to go with their dominant hand to pick up the pencil. You're not even going to pick it up with your non-dominant hand unless I give you that assignment. It's just like up here. Old patterns are easy. The limbic system, that's easy. We don't even have to work at being in the limbic system. New patterns are difficult, but with practice we can get there. Being intentional. Thinking about, oh, I'm feeling anxious. That's what this is. And this is how it affects me. And this is my response to anxiety. Therefore, I'm going to be really intentional in doing it differently. Not easy. It's going to take a lot of work. But we can rewire the brain that over time it gets easier. Don't hear me say that feelings and emotions and all of that is bad. It's not bad. But when it rules us, that's when it becomes a problem.
You know, it's funny though, but we probably have used that frontal lobe system more often than we think. Because if you're not emotionally attached to somebody, like for example, if you're in business and you get attacked by a customer, and you know that you can't get back at them. If you've done it the first time, you lost business with that customer and you lost whatever, you say, oops, I can't do that again. You learn real fast to use the frontal lobe all the time. But what happens is when you are in an emotional situation with your wife, your kids, you know, friends, family that you have a very close relationship with, it is extremely hard to switch that over to the frontal lobe. So you almost have to treat them as if they were you're not so emotional attached. That's hard to do. Cut off that emotion. That's where the real issue comes into play.
Well, I want to challenge not cutting off the emotion, because I hear what you're saying, and I think what that could lead to is that pendulum swinging to the opposite side. Right. Like, oh, I really want to work on this, so I'm going to cut off the emotion, and now I'm not going to have this emotional attachment or emotional intimacy with my family that's so important to me. So it's not that. It's being aware of my stress responses, and are my stress responses going to take over? So here's one last example. I'll leave you with this because I think that this is a visual that's helpful. If I'm a ship, okay, and I'm in still, calm waters, that's the frontal lobe, still, calm waters, and my goal is way out there, meaning whatever that goal is, like my goal may be to have a better relationship with my spouse or to work on my anxiety or whatever that is. That's my goal. I'm trying to reach that island. If I stay here, can get there slowly but surely. It may take me a while. And in the midst, I may stop off at a different island. I may say, I want to work on this first and then continue to work on that. Like I get to make my own choices because I'm in control. But if I'm a ship and I'm in stormy, rocky waters, They're pushing me to and fro, right? I don't have control. I can't make it to my goal because I'm getting shoved off my course. My emotions are in control. The storm is in control. I'm not saying a storm is bad. I'm saying, look who's in control. I want to make it to my goal. And so I do want to feel, and I do want emotions, and I do want all those things. But I want to be really aware of what's in control. Am I in control because I'm thinking? Or is my limbic system in control? And now I don't have choices. I can't choose to get there. I can't choose to go to that island over there. I can't choose anything. My choices are gone. In fact, what you'll find is in high anxiety, you can't see what your choices are. You don't even see them. It's like driving in a fog on the highway. You can't see your choices. The minute the fog lifts, all of a sudden you're like, I'm driving on the highway. Oh, there's my exit. Oh, there's the sign that says this. Now I can see I can drive in the fast lane or the slow lane. I get to make choices because I've helped work on my anxiety and lifted the fog. Once that fog comes, once that anxiety takes over, it's like a heavy, heavy fog, and I'm on the highway and I'm paralyzed. I don't want to change lanes. I don't want to slow down because someone might hit me. I don't want to speed up because I might hit somebody else. And I lose all my choices. I'm paralyzed because of the anxiety. So the goal is, I want to just work on reducing my anxiety. Is it even reality to think that we're going to live without anxiety? No. Like, that's part of life. But I can reduce it. I can work on it. I can work to manage it. And I can work to be aware of my stress responses and what can I do about that so that I can stay in control and make choices over my health, make choices over my relationships, make choices over my business deals so that I get to make the choices and not my emotions making the choices for me. You can do it. You can rewire your brain. You've got the proof right there in front of you. You guys showed, you could see how you did it in that experiment. Good luck to you guys as you go out and you continue to manage your health and hopefully start to think about managing the anxiety as well. If you have any questions, I know it's noon. I want to be cognizant of that. I'll be sticking around. If you have questions, I'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
That's so